Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zach Congonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
All right, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Me and Alex are absolutely blinged up. Zach,
Get your bright red medals. Yeah,
missing out hard. You can't see it too well. Maybe if you pause your YouTube and then zoom in.
Yeah,
I can't even bring it close up to the camera because the camera will lose focus and it's just a fuzzy mess.
how's that?
But we are wearing your exclusive Nexus Performance medals that you will get if you are a top 3 finisher in a male or female overall.
Yes,
at our comp and in upcoming comps. So it's a beautiful medal.
It looks great. It looks fantastic.
It is quite a nice medal, I will admit.
Very impressed.
It has some nice shades of burgundy to it.
Yes.
Well, I think I just didn't want, like all of our comps that we've done so far, which isn't a whole lot, but we've always given out like a trophy or a medal or a prize that wasn't standard. Wasn't just like, here's a fucking plastic cup that I got and wrote your name on it with black text stuff. You know, like it's, we've always tried to make it something that you could actually hang up on your wall and go like, oh yeah, that was that thing, rather than here's my 5 cups. I don't remember which was which because they're all the fucking same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do our comps in the future, you'll be getting this plus either a trophy or something specific to the comp as well.
If you win.
Yeah, if you
do well.
If you do well.
You don't get one if you come dead last.
No participation awards.
But yeah, we will post it up on Instagram today. So if you listen to this for well in the past, so you can, but people will be able to see it. But
we posted it up 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
I hope that it's a photo of Bowser wearing it. I feel like that would be the most appropriate model to wear it.
We had Jordan's birthday party the other night, and somehow Charlie got him to wear a children's cone,
the party hat. Traditional party hat.
And I was so surprised that he put up with that shit.
He took it really well.
Yeah.
And he just sat there and little paws up. Obviously, she had treats to entice him to keep him still and stationary.
Like if you try to put a party hat on Jack, what do you reckon would happen?
Oh, he'd lose his fucking mind.
He'd cover his whole head.
Mate, that dog is slipperier than a greased up hog. You could not hold him down if you wanted to.
Yeah, I can see that with sausage dogs. You just grab it and
it just goes.
They've actually, if we start off with a fun fact, the reason why they have extra skin is so they can slip out of things easier. So like they're a little bit more like loose skin than some other dogs, so they don't get caught in holes. So if you try and grab him, I swear to God, like I've like held him by the neck and he's been able to like fucking slither out like a slimy snake.
Is that true? I feel like it's all dogs for the most part. I mean, there are dogs that are definitely less skinny, but most dogs have a lot of.
I would probably attribute that more to like, that's more like a cat characteristic, isn't it? Where you've seen those memes, I'm sure Zach has.
Cats fit through a tiny thing.
Yeah, cats are liquids. And they can just literally fit and mold into absolutely anything.
Yeah.
You've seen that, surely.
I have, but I've also seen a cat overestimate their ability to fit through something. I was going on a walk and it was like this, it was actually quite a nice fence. It was like very, very thin holes. And this cat fucking loses his mind. Jack's barking at him, makes a beeline for the fence hole, hits it, doesn't go through it.
Oh no.
Yeah,
panics.
Yeah, that's what we like.
And he was on like gravel and he's like scrambling around, kicking the rocks everywhere. Oh shit, Mittens fucked up. It was quite possibly the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Well, my understanding is that because they've got the whiskers on their face, that they use that as like a guide. So if they push their head through something.
Yeah, but if you're a full pelt, you don't have much time to back out.
No.
The cat he made that choice.
Yeah. Well, he made the choice, but he hasn't tested it with the whiskers beforehand.
No. Yeah.
And his body has gotten fatter than the whiskers. So he might go, hey, the whiskers get through, I can do it. But because he's Chonka Boy, the big fat belly has now got in the way and he's underestimated and he's stuck.
Yeah, these ancient systems don't work in modern times. Same with humans. We have a lot of things that were designed for times that aren't the modern world.
Yes.
Like
things
foreskin.
that
we Jesus Christ.
Well, I was actually this is something that I brought up before the podcast that I got told to save for the podcast.
Yeah.
We're talking about the differences there with I guess, humans over time and where we've come from. I've been watching Chimp Empire on Netflix. Very interesting. About chimps in the Ngorongoro African forest or something. And like we were talking before about the differences of limb length people, lanky people versus short and stocky people.
Yes.
You
Very
look at
important for powerlifting.
very important for powerlifting. If chimps ever decided to create a powerlifting league, they will absolutely dominate all of us 100% hands down. Because
Just for their general strength, or just
general strength, but also like the limb lengths. Like they've got these really long arms, they're low to the ground, they're short legs, the big tall. Those guys could easily pull.
not good for
500.
bench pressing. Not good for bench pressing though. Probably a lot of arm travel. Probably going to put a lot of stress through their front delt, and over time develop some tendinopathy there.
That is a possibility. Yep.
If they don't adjust their training appropriately.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for the chimps? More machines.
Hit some flies.
Hit
I'd
some
say.
flies.
Yeah, hit the. Yeah. If I go into a zoo now, I want to see him on the fly. Assuming it's a powerlifting chimp.
Powerlifting. Yeah. I reckon they would absolutely dominate.
Go do strongman though.
I feel like someone's
Yep.
100% given a monkey a barbell once. Like, surely there's been some curious zookeeper that does the fucking monkeys just use it to bludgeon something else to death. Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Most likely would turn into a weapon pretty quick.
Yeah, he wouldn't be lifting. He'd be like, load up some more weights. He'd just be like, fuck you, bro.
Swing it at the big one.
Yeah.
If you give that chimp enough time, though, and enough patience.
I don't think there's enough patience.
I reckon they could pick it up.
Yeah, I just don't think they'd be disciplined enough to be like, periodized approach. It's all right. We don't need to force progression this week. Just wait, mate. We don't need to 5x5.
I mean, in fairness, seeing as though they won't be on Instagram for 40 minutes between sets, they may be more disciplined than the most average powerlifter.
Less distractions, less first world human problems for the chimps in powerlifting.
So what I'm hearing is you either go to prison or go to a zoo if you really want to improve your powerlifting performance.
Yeah, well, gym members do get gym members do get strong. I hope so. That's the fucking goal.
Jail members
do
seem prisoners.
Jail members.
Members, if they signed up to the jail,
the jail,
they will get strong.
Few square meals, all the time in the world to train, all the boys around you for the motivation.
Yeah,
sounds like.
And if you miss a lift, the big one makes you put Kool-Aid on your lips, but.
High motivation.
Put that Kool-Aid on your lips.
Lots of autonomy.
Flavors. Fuck.
Let's move to our training. What do you mean hitting? We're gonna have a training update from you lately. I've just seen random shit like you throwing balls at shit and
so we bought some throws in. Bought some throws and stretching in. The throws that are complementary.
In what capacity are the throws in there? Like for what reason? Just to get good at throws, or
yeet and skeet, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like trying to add,
the skeet side of the yeet.
Yeah, the skeet side, trying to add some different sorts of loading through those more extended ranges. And in saying that, I did do some of the best jerks of my life the other day. Jerks of a barbell, not the other kind.
Good jerking.
But quiet, comfortable getting overhead. I mean, the overhead position wasn't always bad for me, but the jerk position was always a little bit rougher. With the extra stuff we've been doing, it's actually been feeling pretty damn nice. And then we've also brought the dunk back in, which I am happy to say I am very, very close.
Dunks. Yeah,
well,
we kind of
just swapped the dunks out for the sprints. And now that it's raining way more frequently, it's probably going to make more sense to go do the dunks and round that goal out. I give it maybe 6 months before I'm like consistently able to walk in, just dunk any day of the week, which would be lovely.
Just dunk, and then it's boss. Then from there, you've got to start dunking on people. So,
the goal is to only go to powerlifting comps that are held in like a high school gymnasium from now on. So there is a basketball court. I can bring my own ball, and then whilst everyone else is lifting, I can just dunk.
Yeah,
and then I can get the person who comes second and third and line them up and dunk on them as they didn't come first and are worthless.
Excellent,
so they become dunk fodder.
Good roundup of your training there.
Watch out for Zach at the
covered the goals, the intent, the methodology, all of it.
Watch out for Zach at your local novice comp. He's coming to dunk on you. Don't come second.
Straight.
GPC Nationals winner, undefeated, coming back to a novice comp for sure. For me, I still have my goal set on GPC Nationals, which is way closer than I thought.
What's the date for that?
It's like 14 weeks.
Yeah. It's
real close.
I haven't really started anything yet.
Start prepping.
Jesus.
I've been doing some squat, bench, and deadlift, but it's all been like all my squats have been high bar, all my benching. Well, actually, my benching I've been doing my secondary days in incline close grip press. And my main day, I actually bumped I started a new block this week, so I just bumped the volume up on the comp specific press quite significantly this week. So it's kind of naturally trended in the right direction anyway. And the deadlifts, I don't really do much outside of like comp spec deadlifts anyway. Way less varied. So because I'm good at that pattern, so just hammer that home. And yeah, I guess I better start prepping. But I should probably start doing some comp squats. I should probably start doing some lower rep bench press. Maybe change that secondary to a slightly more specific, I would say. And the deadlifts, I'll probably just keep moving in the direction they are. I'm only doing 3 sets a week on them. So I've just found I don't need a lot of deadlifting. I just kind of build up the muscles around them. And
when you're at 300 plus, it's probably not.
They're pretty stimulating reps. Yeah. Yes. But it's more, for me in the deadlift, it's trying to get out of the opposite to Zach, trying to get out of that extended position and try and like kind of let my arms dangle. It's something that's always kind of been like, I've always been able to kind of like get halfway out the rep and then kind of just like use my back to lift it, which doesn't sound efficient, but it's seemingly worked so far. But I've been really trying to like encourage my body to accept a little bit of flexion, and that's coming along. But yeah, everything's in the right position. I just need to like step things up a gear, but I'm happy with training lately. It's a lot better than it was for Pro Raw, because I remember at this point in Pro Raw when we were talking, it was kind of like, well, fuck, everything's fucked. You know, every joint's fucked, training's kind of fucked, only doing half my sessions type thing. And that worked out decent. So the fact that there's consistent training, my joints are pretty damn good. I'm getting work in on all days. Like I'm doing cardio and mobility on my off days. So a lot more just like total work. And yeah, it's way better than where that was, even though I haven't really started prepping it 14 weeks out.
You're very, very functional in the gym at the moment. Lots of movement, lots of mobility, lots of foam rollers.
Yeah, doing a lot of a lot of stretching and mobility, which is something that we will talk about hopefully in the next upcoming podcast. But if not, some podcasts after that, we just have to organize our guest. But yeah, I know both I and Zach have incorporated more mobility into our training, but I'll save that discussion for that podcast, I think.
Well, similarly,
I've actually got a fresh one for you to try. Well, aren't you, Alex? I cut you off.
That's
Sorry,
fine.
King.
Okay, I'm continuing. Yep. I was going to add to that. It's like I guess I'm joining the bandwagon as well to some extent, because Zach has given me a lot of athletic development. That was upon request, just something a little bit more varied and fun, and probably a bit more of a strength of mine. Played tennis for 7 years, done a lot of athletic development, worked with a lot of athletes on the court, on the field, in the gym. It's just fun, something different, especially when it's just like body weight orientated stuff. Yeet and skeet is probably the best description for it. It's just like you just get in there and fucking throw it around. Most of Zach's cues relate something back to that. Like
yeet and skeet. That's going to be the foundation of everything moving forward.
Yeet this, skeet that.
Yeet this, skeet that. Yeah. And you said one. There was one cue I think for the med ball toss, and it was just like murk a med ball into the side of the. I don't think that's a word, but 100% I knew exactly what you meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's murking something. Like if you walk up and you murk someone in a pub, you just smack them across the face.
Yeah.
So you're murking it.
Yeah. So it's good fun.
I've seen you getting your athletic boy on a bit more.
You're bounding.
Got a video of it. I was going to send it to Zach, but I didn't.
Oh, really? Good, because I haven't filmed any for Zach.
He
hasn't.
Saw you just getting a little bit of these ones.
Oof. Yeah. Getting David Weck in there, head over toe.
Yeah, there's a lot of side to side action. I like it.
Bit of lateral stuff. It's good. Just keeps hips and stuff like that a little bit happier as well. I've noticed, like, I find when I just get too specific on SBD, sometimes the old wear and tear comes through a little bit quicker. But obviously getting those things in with just like a good amount of movement and variability after like a big, heavy SBD meso, nice and restorative, good for the system.
It is.
You change it from sagittal Steve to supple Sally.
Supple Sally.
At least a step in that direction. Well, for you, it's probably a massive step in that direction, but for most powerlifters, that's the general thing. And kind of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about phases. We're going to talk about blocks and our thoughts around them, general plans over like how long they should be, when you should plan, when you shouldn't plan so much, what kind of categories blocks fall into in training, all that stuff. So I think the right place to start is just, as always, just a little bit of definition. So Zach, when I say phases and or blocks, if they're different to you, What do they mean? What do I mean?
I probably would draw some distinction between the word block or a phase. I'd probably say block is a little bit more of a time-constrained unit. Like a block is a subunit of a phase is kind of how I'd word it. A phase, you kind of identify what general qualities you want to be working upon, and the blocks are, for lack of a better word, the blocks that make up that phase. It's quite an apt naming. But yeah, the block would just be the subunit. The phase would be the general quality or idea that you're wanting to push forward.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. So phase is your more macro view. It could be made up of multiple blocks if you wanted to program like that. But the phase would be what intent am I trying to drive with this for a person, and then the blocks are just a period of time essentially. So usually for us, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, I would say, before we either run a deload or change. We will talk about that a little bit, but or your where you're either fatigue is accumulated and you needed to deload, or you need to change stimulus so that you can keep somebody progressing in the right direction,
and even what phase you're in generally will dictate that.
If usually something, often we're changing things because something's come up, as in they're like, oh yeah, I've decided I want to do this comp, and then you're gonna have to obviously change stimulus for that, change the intent for that, and then that would indicate a change of phase or a change of the block that you're in.
Yep.
What about the word periodization to you, Zach? What's
just the Russian national anthem just plays in the background consistently.
I think we have done some episodes on periodization. I should have checked that, but we have. I feel like we still need to cover it again, just briefly. But periodization to us in our mentorship is kind of what we've described as like just really roughly is just like a planning, a way like it's just periodization is just planning over time.
Planning. You could say it's the organization of those blocks in a successive, subsequent manner.
There you go.
The reason why, like, you could have had like a really distinct definition like that, and I think it's important too. But like, the reason why in the mentorship I step back a little bit from that and just call it planning is because it's just become much more reactive and flexible and all those words over the years as I've gone. As in, like, when I was new to the industry, I had to be a lot more blocked out. I had to go like, this is going to be a 6-week block and we're going to be working on this, and then we're going to go into this 6-week block, and then we're going to go into that 6-week block. They're going to build upon each other, which is still generally how my head works, is in like, we're going to take this person, we're going to work on this, and then we're going to get that, and then we're going to get that, but it's way more flexible. The length of the blocks, the intent of the blocks is kind of not tied to exactly one thing. We're just biasing or emphasizing different things. And that's why just general planning has taken over as my definition of that. And it's not only, the other reason is just because it's not only training to me. When I think periodization, I'm thinking multiple life things coming into it. Like, how do I make my nutrition? How do I make my life? How do I get all these other things that come into making me a better lifter and put them alongside my training in a way that makes sense? So I'm periodizing all these things together.
I think that the general understanding of periodization is linked to a person's understanding of how interconnected each quality is. Say for a newer coach who might not understand how things branch into each other, or how certain qualities also build upon other qualities, are going to have that really blocked out view. Like, okay, I'm focusing on building muscle, I'm focusing on building speed, I'm focusing on building strength. But as you understand, everything kind of impacts and contributes to the development of everything else.
Other attributes.
Your periodization strategy becomes a lot more muddled, as you said, a general plan, as opposed to saying, yep, we're just doing this. It's kind of like going fishing in a fucking tie-dye lake. The fish is going to come out lots of different colors. You don't have a blue lake, a pink lake, a green lake, but you can pull different colored fish. I don't know where I was going with that. Someone needs to interrupt me when I start pulling that.
No. It's easier to let you go. Sometimes they work out great, sometimes not so great.
It's better just to do damage control at the end rather than interrupt, I think.
Look, I'm getting better at identifying I don't know what I'm saying right now.
No, you just keep going. Just keep going and then just
be confident.
You get there.
Say it with conviction.
Yeah, but that's a good way of looking at it as well. Like, maybe not the fish exactly in the colors, but but just in general of having that plan, an overarching plan, and just also noting as well when things are going to come up that will affect the plan. And like that's obviously a big part of our role here in the gym, or my role in the gym in particular, talking to people from a monthly coaching perspective. Like, hey, we're sitting down every few months and we're just having a look at what the next few months are that we're trying to set up. So the long-term periodization for us is kind of more split up maybe into those 3 to 6 month kind of periods. And just noting, hey, what are the things that are going to come up? And that's a question we'll ask people. Like, what is going to be the biggest obstacle in the next 3 months for you getting this, guys? Oh, I'm going away and I'm doing this. Cool. So we've got to add that to the plan. We need to adjust, right?
Yeah. This is where, like, exactly what Zach said. I think your experience level and how much you block it. That's a really important point, because as they do get muddled, these puddles or whatever you call them, it is harder to manage a little bit. It takes more intuition as a coach, whether you like directly think about it. It's really hard to come up with like an exact formula and go like, how do I mix these things and everything. It takes a long time to explain that, hence the mentorship being 12 weeks. But yeah, at the start, it's much easier to just go like what Zach said, endurance, conditioning, hypertrophy, speed, whatever. Just split them up and work on one quality, because you'll probably tick a lot of boxes anyway. But this is where what I've got written here is what blocks matter, why training blocks matter. Having blocks in place to some people is really important, but then to others, not really like a useful concept at all. And I guess it comes back to that. The reason behind that is exactly what we've just said, is that like, it's easy to go on Instagram and you'll see somebody post up, periodization is full of shit and blocks don't matter at all, and all the qualities mix and muddle and all that stuff. And then on one hand, if you're a new coach reading that, you're like, yeah, fuck that. And you just start like, and then you just start like putting a plan together, but you're really just throwing random shit in at random places, and random isn't really the goal. It's kind of just understanding, like Zach said, the quality transfer between different qualities, and understanding that they all affect each other, and how to lay that out, how to emphasize things, how to de-emphasize other things, and make it all work together in a cohesive system.
I mean, to play devil's advocate there real quick.
Yeah, go.
When you look at some of these people who do approach and say, okay, periodization's a crock of shit, random stuff works.
Yep.
The level of thought that goes into an intervention is kind of matched to the novelty of the problem. If the problem is incredibly novel and it can be solved by anything, which means, say, for example, you have a novice and literally anything is going to get them better, then an approach that's completely randomized is probably going to produce as good a result as a very well thought out plan, because you can't make someone progress at a quicker rate than going from 0 to actually moving. So in those instances, those randomized or those more, you could say, less thought out approaches, they can work just as well. But as the problem becomes less novel, you can't beat that with randomness. You're going to have more of a specified or more, at least a directed approach to create the outcomes to push forward a specific known problem or goal or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like when I used to work in commercial gyms and just started, I used to think to myself, crap, I need to know everything to be able to get these people results. Like, I need to go and read 50 textbooks before I can start telling Suzanne how to lose a couple kilos or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you overcomplicate it a lot. And looking back on it, it's like, no, like you only need to be one step ahead of these people. Like, you only need to be slightly ahead of them. And at that point of time, I was. So like, you don't need to be super advanced in your approach to them.
Yeah.
Zach and I, we were talking about it, something in this realm a little bit last week, in that you kind of, when you're starting off as a lifter, you can do a lot more work, a lot more volume. You can stuff things up greatly, and like the consequences aren't going to be near as much. As in, like, if I go in and I hear 10 by 10's a great program, if I'm a novice, I'll probably get away with that. Probably get great results with that. Whereas, like, and as you get more advanced, you can get away with less. So your systems, your program, your planning, your periodization, your phases, all that stuff needs to be a little bit more together and makes more sense.
Yeah, 100%.
It just creates a finer point for those goals. And to me, that's what I guess periodization or blocks kind of mean. It's just gives yourself a time-bound direction to push a similar quality. Like for me, moving back into the dunking, I don't have a 8-week dunking plan. I just know on Fridays I'm going to jump at a metal ring with a ball in or out of my hand and hope that each time I do it, I get a little bit higher. Like that's the periodized plan. I just know for 8 weeks this quality is being prioritized, and some of the other work is probably going to be decreased to allow that quality to be exposed better.
Yeah. So within these general phases and the blocks within, if we're going to define it like that, we have, well, I've come up with kind of roughly 4 buzzwordy phases here that the average powerlifter would run through, and the timeline of them kind of runs around comps. As in, when you hit a comp, you're at your most specific phases. You've got a lot of qualities, strength and skill emphasized a lot. The other qualities a lot more backed off, and puts you in a certain situation. I think most people can understand that, how you feel coming into a comp if you've done a comp. You know where I'm standing. You know what I'm talking about. After that phase, we're going to be doing, I hope, something much different than the phase leading into comp. We're going to be emphasizing different qualities. We're probably going to be different training in different, monsters get me, in different rep ranges, in different volume, intensities, frequencies, different exercise selection, doing a different amount of cardio, I hope, a different amount of mobility, looking at health markers a little bit more, all these different things. So like we're going to go through each one of these phases and the different goals for them and all those different things that make them up, and talk about them a little bit more. So after a comp, the phase that I have, what I've called the phase after a comp, is a restoration phase. So we're going to be restoring, rebuilding, reinvigorating,
all those buzzwords,
whatever, your training. So we're going to be restoring lost qualities essentially. So like I said, during a comp prep, less focus on cardio, less focus on mobility, more focus on specific movements, more skill movements, less focus on hypertrophy, more focus on fatigue management, like very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a comp, we're essentially flipping the script a little bit. We're going like, we don't need to be good at 1RM, squat, bench, and deadlift for the next bit of time until the next comp is. So let's say like 6 months or something. And we need to be better as a human now. The powerlifter side of me can step aside, and the human side of me can step forward and can start emphasizing the qualities that I'm missing as just a general human, and bring those to the forefront. That's going to, down the line, make me a better powerlifter.
What I kind of want to chime in there as well is just saying that a lot of powerlifters will see this sort of a phase as just a time to stop doing the thing that's fucking you up. It's like, okay, cool.
Yes.
If heavy low bar is making me sore, I'm just going to do slightly less heavy low bar. Going through a phase where you're trying to actively push these other qualities, it's not just about tapering down the volume of the things that's fucking you over. It's like if you've just abused Tren for 16 weeks and destroyed every meaningful relationship in your life and your PP don't work no more, you don't just stop taking Tren and be like, I am health. Like, I've done it. No, you kind of have to do some things, like maybe call your mum who you throw a beer bottle at and do some cardio to resolve some of the problems that your Tren-fueled rage brought forward. Like, you're pushing the needle in the other direction. You just don't stop pushing it the wrong way. Is kind of what I'm trying to get at there.
Yeah, you're still going to be training hard. You're still going to be pushing. You're still going to hopefully moving forward. We're definitely not going backwards. Your 1RM strength is going backwards potentially because we have less emphasis on it. But it's not gone. It's still there. It's just not needed now. And we're going to be focusing on all the secondary qualities. And we've spoken on this extensively, so there's no point going into them. But definitely cardio, mobility, higher rep ranges, more in my training, more supersets, more isolated isolation movements, so more like things that I can accumulate a large amount of volume on without beating up my joints as much. All these things, as well as some of the other qualities of training, like enjoyment, like literally just throwing in
that's a massive one.
some guns because I want to work on my biceps, which usually only lasts 2 weeks. And then
enjoyment doesn't matter. You got to be grinding all day, every day. Because if you're too busy enjoying training, you're not holding that perfect technique.
Well, I think it's like most powerlifters are probably enjoying the peaking phase, though, right? Like they're probably still getting enjoyment out of it because they're doing the thing, they're expressing the strength, they're putting numbers on the board and stuff like that. But there's also the psychological fatigue that comes from that every week of coming in and having to put 5, 10 more kilos on the bar. It's nice to have a different kind of mode of progression as well when you get into that restorative phase where it's not just about the numbers on the bar. And I think there's something to be said about dropping some psychological fatigue at that point as well.
Oh yeah, like it's nothing. Like during my preps, like obviously I'm doing singles or something really heavy on my squat, bench, and deadlift, which means there's a lot of prep work, warm up work to get up to those weights. Yeah. And usually I'm like, an hour or two into my session by the time I have even thought about getting through squats, bench, or deadlift, whatever the session is, and then I've got kind of just minimal effective dose of the other shit, like to get in after it.
Yep. And
they all kind of like get pushed aside a little bit, and it's like, during after post comp, you're like, it's nice because you can do your couple of squat warm ups. Maybe you're doing like some constraints, like throwing some tempos in, throwing some pauses in, maybe a different bar in that limits load a little bit, and you can slam it out. Maybe you set rest times. You do lots of little things to get through it a lot quicker, and then you can do way more of the other stuff that's a little bit more fun and push different qualities as well. So like, I find, and tell me if you guys think differently, but by focusing on the other qualities, like that makes it more enjoyable for most people. Like I don't have to ask, like, what do you enjoy? It's like, I know that if I just change things up a lot and get away from squat, bench, deadlift, they're probably going to enjoy that because I've just gone through a phase of really heavy squat, bench, deadlift and a lot of volume through squat, bench, deadlift.
Yeah, even just the repetition of doing it over and over again. Like you're doing squat, bench, and doing it again, and adding that overload to it. That just when you get to something different, there's almost something relieving about it. You're like, oh sweet, I don't have, maybe as much pressure on yourself. Maybe from that perspective
definitely the pressure
as well.
Side, yeah.
That's something big that obviously a lot of powerlifters experience.
Most people also enjoy not feeling like a turd sandwich. Like as soon as you bring in some of these other qualities, the person's like, all right, everything doesn't hurt as bad. This is kind of nice.
You know what? The turnaround is so fast.
Yeah.
Because it's like when this is going to sound fucking terrible, but when you're so shit at something, aka like you've let your cardio slip into absolutely horrendous territory, or mobility slip into horrendous territory, or whatever. You've let any other quality attribute slip so badly in a peak block, whether that was planned or not. Usually, whatever. Usually only takes a couple of weeks of working on that thing, and you're like, it's because it's brand new to you, and because it's so crap, it's so easy to bring up. Like if you haven't squatted at all, if you're a bodybuilder and it's never been a focus of yours, then all of a sudden you do a couple of weeks with a little bit more focus on that, and you're a way better squatter, and things happen really quickly. It's the same.
It's exciting.
Like, you do like a couple of weeks of stretches, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I can touch my fucking toes. Like this is incredible. And give it a couple more months, and I'm going to be able to, bend in half. That's not the case, because just like training, like when you do your first couple of comps and you make a heap of progress between them, you think, fuck, I am on to be a world champion in 10 comps if I just keep making this progress. But it doesn't work like that. Things slow down, unfortunately.
My favorite thing is talking to young lifters and having the same conversation every time. Like, yeah, man, first comp I put on like 40 kilos, my total. Second comp I put 50. If I keep going, it's like, let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there.
Bring that expectation right back down.
Let's taper that down. I don't think you're going to hit 1,000 by 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard though, because you don't want to take the wind out of the sails too much.
No, you got to keep it there to some extent. That was in the I remember reading, I think it was Scientific Principles of Strength Training from Juggernaut, and they were talking about great book. They were talking about Ed Cohen, and talking about like the negative adaptation. What's their adaptation?
SRA curves.
SRA curves. They're talking about adaptive resistance, right? So the longer you're doing one thing, the more resistance that you develop to it, the less gains essentially that you make over time. And they're like, that's a good thing that it's in there, because otherwise Ed Cohen would have simply consumed the whole world by now. So we're all kind of lucky that that exists.
Yeah, as you get bigger or as you get stronger, you get it's much harder to find gains for sure. But that's restore. So in the restore phase, we're trying to like simply bring back qualities. It's not hard. You do a little bit of cardio. The threshold of how much cardio you need as a powerlifter is not fucking high. So like you don't need much, but you'll get back to a baseline pretty quick. You put some in. Same with mobility. Same with any of these other qualities like hypertrophy. Usually, like you do a bunch of exercise that you haven't done in a while for a volume that you haven't done in a while, and you usually like can stack on some gains pretty quickly. But it's not going to it's not going to last. So hence why we have these phases. Next one we have the build phase. So simply as the name suggests, we're building muscle primarily, usually a more hypertrophy biased phase, usually still quite a higher level of variance. So usually, I would say you're still hitting SBD, you're still working on skill. You're never going to take that out. It's always just going to be emphasized or de-emphasized, but you're maybe using a variant that isn't super loadable, so it's not beating you up as much. You're maybe holding your proximity to failure, your RPEs back a little bit, and you're putting the majority of your energy, the majority of your effort, the majority of your recovery into more hypertrophy biased stuff. So like longer range of motion stuff that's more stable that you can take closer to failure. Things like a fly, like a press, machines, like a leg press, like the list goes on. But yeah, it's that hypertrophy bias for the most part that most people are going to get in this phase.
You could kind of look at it like okay, this is another shitty analogy, but the restore phase. The restore phase.
I saw you hesitate there.
I was thinking about it. If you look at it like traffic, if you look at it like traffic lights, the restore phase, you kind of just cruising through. You're still going to put some work in, like your foot's still on the gas, but you're going through these easy qualities. Build phase, it's your fucking amber light. Like you're not running reds. Nothing in this phase should be like, oh fuck, the popo's coming, let's send it. But it's at a high intensity, relatively high volumes and frequencies. This is just what I would call the missionary position of training. This is just every night to the
traffic lights to sex.
These analogies are blending hard. I think you realised halfway through that the traffic lights didn't work, and you're just
no. So let's change to fornication. But yeah, it's just the quality work that everyone says this is what gets you stronger.
Yeah. You're going to look at your weaknesses, your muscular weaknesses. You're going to be looking at bringing them up. Usually that comes down to how you're built. It also comes down to like just what you've emphasized prior to powerlifting a lot of the time as well. Like if you're a cyclist, you're probably not going to have to build your quads up too much, stuff like that.
And like we were talking about as well, dependent on what type of cereal you can reach at the supermarket, depends on how much specificity is in this phase. Like if you're a little chunky
absolutely.
Munchosaurus and you're fucking 4'2" and have the leverages of a small god, then you could probably have some more competition-specific work in this phase because it's going to...
Squat all day. That can be your quad movement.
Yep. Because it's still going to stimulate the patterns that we're going to stimulate. But if you look like, what's his name? Jack Skellington from the Halloween movie, then chances are you're probably going to be biasing more stuff that isn't competition-specific because those movements are going to be trash at actually building anything besides erector thickness.
Yeah, so give a little bit more color to that. Like, when you're talking about building a squat, the prime move out of the hole is always going to be quads. And if you are built unfavorably for it, so it's usually the taller, lankier people, then your back, a lot of the time, is your lower back is going to be the thing that gives out before your quads, which makes, in turn, the squat a pretty terrible hypertrophy movement for the quads for you. So you're going to have to find different ways to simulate your quads and the squat pattern for you. So usually it's like a belt squat, a pendulum squat, a leg press, and then more direct work like leg extensions, stuff like that. Whereas, as I said, the more chunky, the Chinese weightlifter, little short femur guy, the guy who walks in the gym day one and squats 100 kilos, that guy's probably just going to
give him some squats.
He's probably going to do something like a 5x8 on the squat, and that's going to be his leg moves. He's probably not going to bother with leg press, probably not going to bother with like leg extensions. He's just going to squat all day and build some chunky legs. And but he probably is going to suck at other stuff, so we're going to look at supplementing in other days. But just to help people visualize what that actually looks like in action a little more.
Let's just kind of attacking like we said in the build phase, like we're hitting some of those weaknesses. So you've got to really identify what that is. Filling gaps is a good way to look at it. Like okay, what is this person missing? currently, or what have they been missing, and how can we build that out that's the most effective and efficient for their type, for where they're at.
And you're probably going to look at filling the biggest holes first. Like, you're not going to look at like the smallest rate limiter and start plugging that. Like, you're allocating your resources based off what is just the lowest hanging fruit that's going to provide the most benefit. Like, if your dinghy has 2 holes, a big hole and a little hole, you're going to plug the big one first.
Yep.
Do you want to give an actionable example to that? Because I feel like people are just like, yeah, boats, yeah.
So an actionable example of that is, say someone's squatting, and every single time they squat, they just go massive stripper squat. Their ass goes backwards, their spine goes forwards, and everything goes fucking sideways.
Perfect.
For that person, you're not going to be giving them foot pressure drills to make them feel their midfoot more. You're probably just going to try and get their legs bigger, especially, again, if they're lacking quality muscle mass. It's like people have this great ability to just find some of the most superfluous problems and then funnel hours of resources into fixing it. It's like, no. The glaringly obvious one is probably the one to fix first. And then you can go and make, like, a great example of this is seeing somebody, if they need to lose a bit of weight and their weight and shape is affecting their position. Like, I'm not giving that person breathing drills. I'm giving that person cardio and a deficit.
Yeah, for sure.
There's bigger things there to fix that'll build more of a return.
Yeah, and they're going to probably fix those other things like the dominoes are going to fall. Next we have a skill phase, which
that's your 5
which
by
is
5.
pretty sounds pretty straightforward, but it's where you're going to work on the skill stuff. By skill stuff we mean competition, squatting, benching, and deadlifting, and very close variants of. So we're going to put more of our workload. If we looked at our days or even the whole week and the amount of work going in over a week, it's going to be more skewed towards more specific comp movements and usually fixing like weaknesses in them. So rather than like muscular weaknesses and stuff, now we've hopefully brought up some muscular weaknesses in the other phase, the build phase. So now we're going to go into a skill phase and we're going to learn how to bring in these new muscles. And sometimes, like Zach just said, like sometimes they'll just fix themselves. You go like, hey, yeah, you got bigger quads. Fuck, your squat looks way better. Sick. Sometimes you will need to teach people how to apply that a little bit more and get them out of their old patterns a little bit. So that's where maybe the foot pressure stuff comes in. Maybe changing their stance comes in a little bit, giving them lots of pauses and tempos and stuff like this to help them spend time in weaker positions. Things like this are going to be done for a higher workload.
You could phrase it as well as using this phase is doing what you can to integrate what was built in the building phase. So in the skill phase, you're going to give them exposure to competition-specific positions and try to either integrate, if it doesn't happen automatically, what you've built, or alter the position to make better use of what you've built. Yeah. Kind of like the test drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And once you've come up with a plan as to how you're going to make that happen, it's just going to be more of your volume. Probably that's probably going to result in more frequency over the week. It's easier to split up volume usually once you start pushing it. And the intensities are still going to be based on exercise, I say. So I don't think it's we can easily say like generally intensity is going to be higher or lower. It's probably, more exercise dependent and stuff.
Well, that's as you get that specificity closer to, generally you'll see that intensity go up anyway because they have the ability to push more output. Generally in those variations, you'd hope.
Yeah. And if not, probably change the variations. Like I've had some people who their output on their close grip bench in a build phase is exponentially above their wide grip bench. And at that point, I'm probably just going to change their comp bench to a close grip bench.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to squeeze water out of a stone, just do the thing that they're already good at.
Yeah. Do we have any more to say on that, on the skills sort of phase? This is to give people a timeline. Like when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking like this is your 15-ish, 12 weeks-ish, maybe weeks out right up until your peak. And then there'd be blocks within that phase, obviously. But like this is kind of the overarching theme of the blocks. But right up until when you start to taper or when you start to peak, that this is where like you're mainly focusing on skills.
It's when you've added the oils but not the orals.
Jesus. Bringing Wider here. Wider's sponsored the podcast.
Oh my god.
I don't think you've ever brought up drugs in any podcast, and then this one you just had a field day.
I was making some drug memes before, which was why.
Ah,
So I was
yeah.
having a good laugh. It was fresh. There's some good memes coming tomorrow.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Stay tuned.
So now, then we have in the peaking phase, which is probably the easiest one to explain. It's where you're peaking for your comp. So it's where you're taking all the muscle you built, all the skills that you built up until that point. You've hopefully gotten a more specific program over that time. You put in all the work, you built your lifts, you're now stronger, and now it's time to bring fatigue down so that we can express that strength via a 1RM, which is obviously our competition movement and our competition setting for that. So, yeah, it's all essentially about getting really fucking good at singles. So you're probably going to be doing a fuckload of singles at an intensity where you can hold relatively good technique for the most part. And then towards the end of the peak, you're going to be pushing a little bit higher intensities where you might see some breakdown, but that's okay because it's fucking heavy. And also the reason I've called it peak rather than like a taper phase or something like that is just because like when I think peaking, I think everything is involved in peaking. So like confidence, momentum into a comp, just mental mindset and the little things that we do with clients to get the most out of them in that way. Whereas taper, I just think purely like programming when I think taper. So that's why I've called it peak. It's comp movements, comp specificity to the max. You're turning the other qualities down to make way for that, and just giving yourself or your client every opportunity possible to be the best on the day.
You could even think of it slightly outside of the context of prepping for a specific competition. More so as you're peaking for the specific outcome that you want. So say, hopefully in a competition prep where you're going to go to a platform and do a single, if your peak doesn't include singles, then that's an issue. But say if you're doing a gym max out and you're trying to peak up your triples, then you're probably not going to be doing singles. It's dependent on the goal that you're peaking towards, what the majority of the workload consists of. And the whole point of it is just to get as specific as possible to the outcome that you're trying to produce on the given day of performance. So you just do a bunch of that.
Yeah. So if your goal's to dunk, probably gonna do way more dunking and way less other random shit that you do.
More dunking,
less
underhand bench press.
That's the new exactly. One. I've seen that.
It's super. It's very hard to unrack.
Yeah, I could imagine.
It's very hard.
Yeah, that was always my problem with the Swiss bar. You know, the Swiss bar, the multi-handle thing. I don't mind it.
Boy.
Yeah. The wrist definitely, but just unracking it, just a fucking nightmare. And then I just couldn't be bothered, so I just kind of dropped that real quick.
It has the same issue as the low-handled trap bar because the weight is on the same axis of the grips, but it doesn't move. It jangles. So you need that bent, that sweet bent Swiss bar. The kabuki one.
Oh, the kabuki one. Yeah.
It's probably not called the bent Swiss bar. But that's what I call it.
No, that makes it sound like it was like not intended. Like we fucked it up.
Chris Duffin's like bent, rolling over in his grave. Oh, he's not dead.
Defect.
He's rolling over in his wood shop room. I don't know. Please come.
So the last one here we've got is how these flow into each other. So the way we've explained it, obviously, like in a restore phase, you're restoring qualities that you didn't have that are going to bring up qualities, very general qualities as a human that are going to carry over into specific qualities later on. And then in a build phase, you're going to bring up usually muscular weaknesses. You're going to be putting a lot of volume through there whilst keeping skill work around, but at a slight like de-emphasis. Skill phase, we're bringing that up, bringing the hypertrophy down a little bit, and then during a peak phase, we're really bringing in the quality, the thing that you're trying to achieve. You know, powerlifting comp, 1RM, or like Zach said, peaking in the gym for 3RM, do that thing a lot. And it makes sense that they would flow into each other. However, as we were talking about before, with kind of novices and advanced people, if you are more advanced and you've been bodybuilding for the last 10 years and then you're coming over to powerlifting, you probably don't need much of the build stuff, and you can probably run skill phases back to back. Like there's nothing stopping you from identifying weaknesses and just running these sort of blocks multiple times and just really focusing on what you're bad at. This is just a general framework for the average person who's kind of generally like level across the board as far as qualities go.
Yeah, I think that's important to kind of keep in mind. It's like, okay, well, how long do we spend in these phases? And it's like, well, it depends on the person that we're talking about.
What do you suck at?
Yeah, what do you suck at? What do you need to work on the most? What qualities do you need to bring up? Where do you need to spend the most time? Generally, with the opposite of those advanced people, it's probably spending more time in building phases and stuff like that. You know what I mean? That's where the lowest hanging fruit is for the newer people. Spend some time building those general qualities that we can get more specific with later on and peak higher.
And I know I've said this before in almost every podcast, but keep doing the thing until you reach the objective goal that you set out to achieve. Like if you're trying to build more skill, then probably set a reasonable objective outcome that you would like to tick off before you move on. So you can kind of say, this was successful. Like say in your skill phase, if you want to try and resolve a specific technical fault.
Yeah,
say,
your knees coming in a squat or whatever.
Yeah. Say for example, you wanted to resolve that. Then you'd put together your then you'd put together your plan to involve as many hip circles as possible. But no, you'd say, cool, to resolve this problem, I need to do X, whether that's bigger quads, improve position, and then spend the majority of your time in that phase. So if you've identified the knees coming in as a skill issue, then front load a bunch of skill work, stay in that phase until it looks like you think you've resolved it at the general intensities at which you're running at, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So have something in mind to try and achieve, is what I'm saying.
These phases are not usually short. The first and last one, the restorative type phases and the peaking phases are usually relatively short in comparison, as in like I would say 1 to 2 blocks, so like 6, 10 weeks, something like that maybe.
Unless you go to smell your own toes, then you extend it. But...
then, but yeah, the build and the skill phases are generally where you're going to be spending the majority of your time, and usually those are going to last for 12 plus. Like I was speaking to Alex earlier and saying how these days, because programming knowledge is more, people are just more generally aware of things like this, of phasing and of blocks and of changing objectives and how these things all flow into each other and all that stuff. People are more trigger happy to jump between things. They're like, oh yeah, cool, I built some muscle. I want that to carry over. I'm going to go into my new program or whatever. Yeah. Whereas when I did bodybuilding, I remember begging my coach for a new program because it had been like fucking 6 months of doing the exact same week at the exact same volumes, at the exact same intensities and stuff for all of that time. But it actually, I was gaining. I was getting ahead.
Sure.
I was only chucking on the little plates every now and then, but I was putting in max effort, and there was a couple of reps here and a couple. We're still building slowly. The stimulus for hypertrophy is quite slow, so your progression doesn't need to be fast. No. And yeah, I came out of that fucking great. Like everything felt great. I was making great progress, running the exact same. It was just maybe the enjoyment factor was down a little bit.
Would have dropped off at about that 3-month period. Yeah,
and also it is, I should note on a slight caveat to that, is that it was bodybuilding. It's like it was hypertrophy, which definitely doesn't need periodization to the same fact, because it's not a performance goal and it's not usually
less specific outcome requires less specificity to dial that in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like your program isn't usually the thing that's changing in bodybuilding too much. You're just more scaling it to your recoverability. Like you're just taking away a couple sets here and there. You don't have to go like, oh, I need to get good at bench pressing. Yep. Just like, hey, I need to look good in my undies and I can do that in fucking any way, shape or form. Just that's it. Things don't fucking change.
You're periodizing upon which eating disorder you got post-comp.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what impacts the plan more than anything.
Yeah, are you a binger or are you going to continue to restrict and and fill out your what's the other one?
maybe Tam should edit that out.
No, it's good. It's good.
Leave it in.
Bodybuilder. Nobody's making it this far if you're a bodybuilder.
That is a very fair point.
People know my disdain for bodybuilding. I'm not a big fan of it, even though I did it. Anyway, let's finish it up there. That's a good place to
leave it.
All right.
Whoo, red hot.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.